let's get started. So Michael, Chris, Jeff, Todd, between Brian and I, we know you all. So welcome to an interactive conversation about where we are, where we're going with what we call beyond the pandemic. Um, at this point, I don't think there needs to be an introduction, but I'm Jay Gagne. I am the former CTO at Razor, now running enterprise sales. Brian Ayton is my counterpart in this, who has actually been at Razor longer than I have, which has been 12 years now, and has been a part of lots of conversations with many of you. And here's what we kind of want to talk about. So, we're going to throw a lot of stats out there, which the reason we're throwing the stats out is hopefully to just help you reinforce in your environments how much has changed in the past, we'll call it 10 months, let's just say a year. What experiences have we had? What do we take away from it? How are we going to continue to adapt, and what are we going to do in 2021? So, simply put, we're structuring this as a 3-part series. So today is remote workforce. The next series is going to be on the network side, and the last will be cloud. And the reality is there's going to be reoccurring themes. So security, obviously, throughout the entire conversation is something that, is paramount to success for any of us as providing you support, you providing support for your organizations, et cetera. And then, looking kind of further down the road, what do we need? What options do we have? How do we plan, going forward into this? Reality is, if you had asked anybody back in March of last year how long this pandemic was going to last versus where we are today, no one would have predicted we're going to be where we are. So when we start throwing up some numbers here, there's going to be no surprise that the numbers are kind of staggering. We're in a new state of reality as we go forward. And when we talk about the remote workforce, which is every one of us, and what are we doing individually, and what are we doing for our organizations, and how does that help us navigate through this a little bit more certain time now, because we've lived it for almost a year. We've tackled a lot of the challenges along the way, but there are challenges remaining, and those challenges are, what happens when we actually get to open our doors again and get to have people back in the office. Who wants to come back to the office? Who, if I've seen a period of productivity is a bit up, and we just had to tackle some technical challenges to get through it. How do we bridge the gap in what used to be normal and what is going to become the new normal? So if you look at it, it makes perfect sense. You can call this a short-term crisis and a long-term impact. And depending on what company you work for, I grew up in a 185-year-old insurance company a few decades ago. So a year is but a blip in the landscape of what that, and that was the Hartford, by the way, what they had to go through. But the reality is there's been massive disruption in what we have typically had to do to operate our organizations. There's been a lot of pressure put on, how we do it. Let's face it, when we were all in the office together, you used to be able to go tap Brian on the shoulder, run down to the help desk or run over to the project manager and, you know, kind of elicit support for what was going on. And now we're doing it completely virtually. So we're a little bit constricted on how we interact. The companies that now have taken a virtual approach are thriving on that. The other aspect of it is there's nobody, and I'm not 100% sure for those that are online here, whether you're like in retail, places where you've been severely impacted on your ability to generate revenue. But no matter whether you're retail, I don't even the ones that are in like the grocery business where they're booming. They've still had to adapt to this new reality that we're all living in, and the net of it is we all have to transform into a new world where the remote workforce, the work from home, the curbside pickup, the delivery is a part of our everyday that used to be a portion and now becomes more predominant in our everyday life, whether it's business or personal. And the reality of COVID-19 is there's the business aspect for all of us, and there's also the personal aspect, and we all have to live through it. I mean, in my own personal life, I love the fact that my last checkup with my doctor was a 15-minute video call where we just kind of went through, okay, what are my medications and how are you doing, and I didn't have to wait in the entry room at his doctor's office for an hour or two just to have that 15-minute conversation. I got to have that 15-minute conversation on my time, at my time. And there are small benefits, but the reality when it comes to COVID is there's much more from a business perspective that we have to account for. So,
and hey, Mike, can I call on you real quick? Kind of talk about that. You have a
Sure.
unique perspective in the business that you work at. You're a Steelcase provider, so you're providing office furniture, add, move, change, new to essentially corporate America, right? Which not a lot of companies are using their office furniture in the traditional sense, but all the conversations that we've had together, you guys have changed dramatically in the way you are helping redistribute equipment from organizations to their houses, and then kind of seeing a little bit of a shift in the way you're handling your warehousing.
Yes, correct.
Briefly.
I mean, yeah, correct. With our, I mean, we've been able to, we've taken a hit, but we've also have been able to weather and get some new business because of our existing client base is invested in first line response and healthcare and all that. So we have clients that are having us pick up existing furniture, chairs, etc., that are at their office spaces, bringing them back to our warehouse. We're cleaning them, shipping them right out to the user's house directly. So instead of buying a new office chair for someone who's going to be at home for a long period of time, they're leveraging the assets they already have and sending them direct to the people's houses. We spun up a 125,000 square foot warehouse for the sole purpose of taking on one client's um, worth of PPE storage and delivery. So we're receiving it all in on truckloads of pallets of PPE equipment, and then breaking them out and compiling them and sending them off to the various locations that it needs to get delivered to. So our operations team has been running nonstop. That is one side of the business that has run nonstop and actually picked up because of this.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's pluses and there's positives and negatives all the way around, but that is definitely one of the good positives for us that has helped us along the way here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Those were good stories, and I remember Mike and I were. He was one of the first guys I grabbed lunch with. I guess it was kind of towards the end of the summer as things kind of started to open up before they closed back down. So we had a moment of normalcy in this whole scenario, and these stories in the way that they changed their business or were adapting to kind of meet the current needs was kind of unique when you think about what they traditionally were. You would have thought that from an outsider's perspective that it would have been a ton of struggles and not as much going on as what they had. So it was good to hear that.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality, for that conversation, like the what comes next. A lot of organizations have already figured out, like you explained, hey, let me leverage something as simple as a chair. How do I not have to have you go to Staples and buy a new chair? How do I get you your chair to you where you are? And that's, I don't want to belabor all of the stats here, but changing the customer needs and expectations, that's part of this. Just the creative things that all of us are doing to adapt to the challenges and leverage what we have and make it easier for everybody to work from home, to be comfortable, to whether it's an upgraded device or someone didn't have a headset or a laptop or a chair, for us to collectively, organizationally figure out what the real problem is and how do we fix it. If it's as easy as don't buy a new chair, whether you come and pick it up at the loading dock or the office front door, or we ship it to you, is how we're proving that we're being resilient and maximizing what we can out of a really bad situation. So no doubt there isn't a company out there, and we've heard this was long before the pandemic, no one is increasing their budget. What 2020 showed us was an impact of not only did we not increase the budget before the year started, we got hit with a bullet in March to not only march to the budget of the annual company number, but to do it in a time that was increasingly difficult. No one thought, the first bullet here, we went from, having maybe 40, 50, 60% of our users at any one time accessing our corporate resources remotely to literally 100%. There was no doubt from March until now, and maybe things in different states are a little different, but you're still accessing 2 to 3 times what you originally planned. And from a Razor perspective, we've seen customers that they had the horsepower, maybe they didn't have the licensing, or maybe they had neither and they needed more horsepower. And that was the struggle of 2020, to figure out how do we handle the remote workforce. we're all out there. We need, whether we're, in a lot of cases, it was people that had a home computer, but the organization wasn't going to trust that home computer in a container for security, et cetera. And, we've had to figure all that stuff out. So, it's been a crazy journey. So, a perfect quote is, if you look at, and Brian and I had a good conversation yesterday on, it doesn't matter to me where you set the timeline in the past, whether it was 2015, 2017, or even early 2020. The reality is our ability to handle this pandemic came at a time where we were actually, for the most part, not that there weren't a lot of challenges, we actually could handle this pandemic. And if it had happened in 2017, 2015, we would have not been anywhere near as capable to handle the challenge. So
I look back and I was like, without Teams, because we're a Microsoft shop, right? I don't think Skype would have ever been able to even closely handle this.
Yeah,
From
and somehow the technology in the background, whether it was WebEx, Teams, Zoom, Google Meets, there's a whole lot of conferencing platforms. Just think about even in the last year, Brian, you and I know, when it came to Teams, you used to get 1, 2, 3, maybe faces, and now we can get, 20 faces, live on our screen. That technology, while I believe all the manufacturers were trying to go there, the pandemic kind of pushed us there. Like I see my 15-year-old son in a Google Meet where he gets to actually see every face of every kid plus the teacher, even when he's doing the distance learning. So, we're covering a lot of ground along the way. I guess my question, and I'll throw it out, whoever wants to jump in, I'll give you a $25 Amazon gift card for, what do you see as the big challenge you haven't been able to tackle yet? What do you need from technology that you're not getting? Oh, everybody's
that might have been too wide open, Jay.
All right. I'll all right. So
you might need to narrow that one down.
All right. That's Brian. Brian's my straight man. All right. So let me make it simple. What do you need from technology that you're not getting today? First one that says something gets a $25 Amazon gift card.
If you're in the office, you get to see people, whether they're in a conversation with someone else, etc. I know Teams and Jabber, or just pick whatever you're using in your workforce, can show whether you're busy or not, but you much more quickly with your eyes can see who's busy, who's not. You interact with them quickly. You walk up, hey, I need to talk to you about the change that's going to happen this week. When you get a minute, stop in and see me. You can Jabber that, you can IM that, whatever you want, but it seems to be faster if you have that visual accuracy of who's in the office and what they're doing.
Right, so Brian, number one, $25 gift card to you. Number two, that there is that nuance that we all miss. Like I can actually visually see when you're busy versus not. The IM, the Jabber, the Teams, the whatever, it's a status icon. It's a green light, red light. I'm in a meeting, I'm not in a meeting, I'm free, I'm busy.
Right.
But that doesn't help you versus what we were all used to a year ago, where I just looked over here. Oh, Brian's not talking on the phone. He's not touching his keyboard. I can go over to Brian and say, hey, how about this thing? So it's spot on. And you know, yeah,
Yeah, I was
oh,
always
slacker because he wasn't doing anything when I looked over at him. That's,
Yep.
I
You
know
guys have
Brian
all
well
seen me
enough
with
that
my
I'm
feet
sure
on
he
my
was
desk.
doing
I know.
something. He was doing 11 things. He just wasn't moving his hands when I looked over at him. But he still gave me the opportunity
here,
to
guys.
interrupt him and jump in. So, but you know, so that's kind of the crux of the challenge we have going forward, is that nuance of, we have, Brian and I work with a lot of different customers, and just that simple, like, if you think about it, the help desk, you know, I used to be able to just kind of run over and go, tap somebody on the shoulder, interrupt them, and just get that one little thing done that I needed. Now we're, you know, kind of adhering to, you know, a new process, a new way of doing things, and it's all virtual. There's benefits and there's downsides. And Brian, perfect example. Like, I miss I used to be able to run over to Brian Ayton and go, hey, I got this problem, and what do you think about this? And in 2 minutes, we solved the problem that now, you know, even as much as I love Brian and we talk together, it's, you know, it takes longer.
It's a real good
2
point.
texts, I'll call you back. It's
tag you're
voicemail.
it. Exactly.
There are some benefits. I mean, you can, like, do not disturb, you know, you put that on, you try to dive into your work. That still doesn't stop people from hitting you up though. Hey, come on, do you have a minute? Maybe you just put that button on by mistake.
Yeah, well, and the reality is none of us are stopping ourselves from, like, making that phone call or being a bit intrusive when I know you have a do not disturb. I'm still going to disturb. I'm going to try to disturb you. Whether you pick up or not is your choice. But it's a brave new world. It's, you know, the reality of the pandemic is, yeah, we started this off saying it was kind of a short-term problem, but a long-term issue. We're stuck in this chasm right now, whether you know, you want to talk about how soon we're going to get out of this challenge, or you know, where the future is going, whether we're ever going to have to stop wearing masks.
So has anybody's company adopted like a full-fledged work from home policy going forward? I know I've read about some, but I actually don't know of any, and you guys may be one or not. It said, okay, maybe you can work from home, you know, 50% of the time from here on out. Has anybody had that happen?
Well,
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for Horsham, I haven't talked to you in a bit, but I'll be working on from home 100% because the office closure is going to happen. They're going to close the Horsham office and then open a new one in Dallas eventually someday. You know, Salt Lake, another one as well. So they're looking at their workforces and their spend and saying, yeah, there's so few people, and we've proven they can work from home. So yeah, if anything's happened in the last year, some of the C-level guys who were like, you must come in the office, they've learned differently. You can be more effective. Matter of fact, it's better for them because they're showing statistics that workers are working longer at home, you know, than they should be.
Yeah.
I think there's
Now
one.
there's and not to belabor the eyesight chart we have in front of us, but that's the reality is, and we've all, whether we were the person doing it or the person approving it, you know, realize that sometimes working from home, having a flexible schedule, you get more work done. It's not about the hour of the day that you do the work. It's about the amount of work that you do in all the hours of the day. And, you know, the reality of the pandemic is productivity for the most part is up. You know, the reality that we're going to have to plan for, you know, if we give you know, the individuals choices of whether they want to come back to work or not, they will probably pick, hey, I'm okay with what I have. There's no need for change. I'm more productive and I'm more flexible and I'm more happy. And that's, an advantage for everyone. So, I think,
But
Hey, Jay.
go ahead, Brad. Yes. Oh, Stephen, how are you, sir?
Hey, hi, everybody on the call. This is Stephen Nolan. I'm the customer success manager at Razor. I think there's unfortunately one caveat that needs to be addressed, which is now starting to come back into play. And that situation is service providers such as Comcast, specifically in the US, is starting to roll out data caps on their customers. And as of right now in Philadelphia, it's capped at 1.2 terabytes of data. Now, myself and I know other people in my neighborhood have unfortunately hit that cap because of working from home and having three or more people at home doing virtual sessions, virtual meetings, video conferences, and then the kids who are off from school then streaming devices. And so the one thing that employers and employees have to also look at as well is it going to be worth paying the extra? Should employers have to pay the extra money for these data caps because of these virtual conferences? And if these employees can validate the charges that are being occurred to their service provider from working from home, who's going to take on that cost?
Yeah,
So,
Stephen, that's actually interesting you brought that up because I actually had one of my help desk guys actually just complained about that. They sent him the nasty gram, because he's approaching the 1.2 terabyte limit, but he's also only an internet and phone subscriber to Xfinity. Now, I live right down the street, and I also pay for the TV portion of it. And right now, I'm still exempt from the bandwidth throttling and the data cap. So it only seems to, as of right now, they're slipping it in on those users who are doing internet only and are streaming, all day long. And unfortunately for him, he has like 4 kids at home. So teenagers watching Netflix and running Xbox all day is not good for his bill at the end of the month, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah,
And-
well, trust me, Razor actually sponsored a Jersey City school district, to help get kids some needed technology. So call it the Chromebooks, the laptops, etc. Only to find out that the next problem that had to be solved was, they were at capped internet, and when you have 4 kids online, streaming their Google Classroom or whatever schoolity knowledge base, they were running out of data. So I think we're going to see, to that respect, I would say everybody, voice to your carrier, the challenges you might have, because we have moved from the corporation managing a lot of the ins and outs of data to now it being every household everywhere that still has to be a part of business. And what worked a year ago doesn't work as well now.
Yeah, Jay, and another thing that Comcast is slipping in, but they're not. You have to be like a Comcast business or enterprise customer to know about it. So they're sliding in a Comcast business at home option so that you can deploy a second Comcast link for your employees to use in their home office.
Sure, because I'm sure that's somehow related to some $50 upcharge per user.
Yeah.
That makes up for it. So
Verizon user, and I didn't have any idea of this. In fact, when I kind of shared with them how many kids were homeschooling here, they went the other way and they provided unlimited data and a faster connection at no increased cost. So it's kind of interesting to hear this about Comcast because I don't have that.
Well, so the one thing that Comcast said before, and I can tell, speaking from experience of working at Comcast, and I worked in the regulatory compliance department, was that the initial claim when they rolled out these data caps in 2015 and 16 was that it was eating up the bandwidth and it was causing more utilization on the network, which studies shown it wasn't true. And it unfortunately is just an upcharge that they're trying to cap people to earn more money. And so what they're now doing to, if you don't want to go the route of having a business internet service at your home, then you can either A, pay the $100 for every 50 gigs of data that you go over, or B, sign up for a $30 monthly unlimited plan and you won't get those data caps. So if you are an internet only person and you're hitting that 1.2 terabyte capacity threshold every single month, you're either going to get hit for the $10 or you have to pay the $30. And in the contract stipulation, it says that Comcast can make these changes without any notification and or authorization required. And so when they sell you, oh, you can get all these speed, they also aren't selling this unfortunate manifestation of the data caps. So it like a lot of people are complaining to the FCC and better business bureaus, which they don't unfortunately have any control over because they loosened. There was a specific regulatory law in place where they loosened it, where providers can actually enforce this or don't have to enforce the data caps anymore. So meaning that they can start charging willingly.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, reality is during the pandemic, let's face it, we've all seen who had toilet paper in March, who probably has 18 to 25 rolls of toilet paper somewhere stashed in their pantry, basement, or otherwise closet now.
Yeah, I
Like,
go to Sam's Club, so I've always had that.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
there are things through this. This is a great point, and I love how interactive this is, guys. You know, the reality is we've all adapted to these. You know, so Steve's story and Michael as well. You know, on the Comcast challenge, that's just a new outcome of how do we, you know, evolve in this pandemic. Or we you know, toilet paper, paper towels, paper products solved, hand sanitizer solved. Now we have, how do I deal with, you know, bandwidth? How do I deal with security? How do I deal with, you know, all of these other upcoming things in this remote workforce that we just like we haven't had to deal with. So anybody, Brian, Michael, you guys have been pretty vocal. You know, what's the other thing that you guys see coming that we haven't addressed yet? What's your fear? I'm going to give you your fear if you don't speak up. Come on, there's Brian. Brian's laughing now, so come on, Brian. What's your fear? I know you have a fear. What are you worried about? What is the next thing that is about to cascade that no one's paying attention to that you're worried about?
I think that's going to be the unknown of what you're not catching as far as like a network incident, or I mean, we all know about the increased breaches that are going on with SolarWinds, et cetera. So, you know, that took them months to figure out that something had gone bad.
Yeah.
So what's the next thing that, okay, your clients are all working from home, all of a sudden, you know, is it their home network got compromised, and, you know, a lot of, you know, not the same protections level like you hope it would be, but you know, that's my next worry, is that something big is going to come up, and it's like, okay, well, instead of like, okay, let's address all these machines because they're all in one place in the office. No, they're all over the country, and you're dependent upon that bandwidth to be sufficient enough that you can patch and fix and clean and do whatever you need to do. I don't think that that capacity has been fully tested. We're getting by. We're keeping the lights on, but we're not ready for the next big challenge.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. There's the reality that every company a year ago had a really good BYOD, work from home, secure your device, whatever the case was, down along the line. And we all had to make sacrifices over the last year where, okay, so and so doesn't have a device. Okay, well, use your login. We'll let you log into Office 365 or whatever the case is and get access to your stuff. But now you're doing it on a device that you have much less visibility on than you had when it was, I'll call it a
Trusted device.
corporately managed device. And that's going to be a continuing challenge. We've all had to deal with it when we think about mobile devices, a phone, an iPad, or whatever. And it was a lot easier to, kind of constrict, control, use, a tool that would manage that. But the bloom of what happened in 2020 has a fair amount of exposure associated. So I completely agree with you, Brian. That is, one of those things we haven't felt the wave of. And, the SolarWinds challenge, even though that's more of it's a corporate software product, but it just proves the reality that, there's a continuing exposure that we all have because we are all working remote and we're all doing it on multiple devices here and there. Some of them corporately managed, some of them personally owned. And, it's not even it used to be BYOD because it was like, bring your own device to work. Well, now it's like, it's just my device. This one's mine. And I already own it and I still need to be able to work. So you have to give me the ability to do the work on my device. And, it creates the challenge that we're in. So,
Yeah. I mean, how many people had to change their inactivity time
Yeah.
for, it's like, okay, yeah, you're going to extend the hours that people are going to be working remotely through that VPN. A lot of changes. So
yeah,
makes
spot
it
on.
complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our case. We went from the 12-hour timeout to always on VPN. Like people are just working way too much.
Or they just leave their machines on. They don't even bother logging out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And the reality is if you make that VPN connection and all it needs is some kind of network tickle to stay alive, let's face it, we all have applications that are going to, keep the connection alive. So, you're going to wind up with, a VPN tunnel, whether the person is actually doing work or not, that could be alive for 2.5 weeks before,
And they went on vacation.
Yeah,
in their
exactly.
backyard.
if they left Outlook open, let's face it, that tunnel's staying open.
If you could keep my team screen during that period of time too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's one additional thing to add to this conversation is that when these corporate companies or corporate entities who are, I don't want to say mandating and or enforcing to work from home, but I think are allowing the employees to work from home, they have to stay within certain SOC compliance and do certain security trainings. However, how do you have the same engagement of the work from home user for a Zoom or a Teams meeting to pay attention to the proper security risks that are being implemented by them when they're just running the video and maybe walking away from the computer? If it says that they're there, how do you keep them engaged? How do you make sure that the user is actually participating in the meeting to ensure they're not creating a vulnerability within the network? Because in security, your users are the number one biggest threat to any security policies and procedures that you put in place.
Fully agree.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so. I was trying to move the slide deck forward here. You know, when we get to security, you know, the reality is, you know, we have a lot more endpoints. Maybe they used to exist in a contained environment, but then now they've been moved out of that environment. And, you know, now the reality of, you know, a potential, you know, whether it's you know, malware, phishing, spyware, you know, ransomware, etc., a lot of organizations, those are residing on an individual's somewhat, you know, controlled device. And you know, we're looking at, you know, the reality of the amount of people that are working from home has doubled or tripled. And you can't argue the facts to that. And you know, we're putting a lot more, you could say, control, and at the same time you could say risk in the hands of individual users. And depending on how diligent your organization is on training those users to not click the link or click the link, I can tell you from Razor's perspective, in the last couple of weeks, we've introduced via a company called Sophos that we use for our security, instead of what we used to do when, and this is me personally, I would take an email that I thought was suspicious and I would forward it to our security folks and say, hey, got this, probably a bad thing. But I was literally forwarding them the actual email, and they could
Go ahead, click on this link for me.
Yeah, exactly. They could have actually clicked on it. Now we have built into our Outlook a thing that says report suspicious message, where it goes to them, and it's not something they can click on. It's just, you know, whatever header and you know, relative information that now doesn't put them at risk of clicking the link that I didn't click, but I might have sent to them and they could have clicked. So, you know, the advancements in security, the plugins to email, the plugins to, you know, your file stores, etc. You know, that has been a huge focus for a lot of the vendors. And I'll say I'll say are the conscious vendors that we work with, that, you know, we're, you know, happy to hear that story. There's a easier way to share that I got this potentially bad message, or my file is corrupt. And you know, the folks that know security and know how to deal with that are, you know, automatically introduced into the situation, as opposed to being totally reactionary and, oh my gosh, network's down. Why? Oh, someone clicked a bad link, and you know, 97,000 of people in their you know, in their address book just got sent an email. So you know, this is a great conversation. So I'm gonna stop talking because I feel like I've talked for a little while. Brian, got a
Well, I
question
know
for Jeff, for Brian, for David, for Chris.
I think we're kind of coming up on our time here, so just open it up. If anybody has anything to add, I think would be worthwhile to share, please go ahead and do so.
How do you guys manage your, I guess, usually non-work interactions? I know I try to set up like Teams meeting just to have a meeting with other guys I work with and not talk about work, talk about other stuff that you might usually do. Like, how are you guys managing that?
You know what? Not Brian, not a question I would have expected to have asked. But actually, Stephen is on the phone, and in Razor we have a group we call the Futurists, and one of the things that we are working on this year, we're just kind of calling it, Razor Wellness, and it's everything from, we're looking for whatever people, whatever works for them. So it's everything from, hey, you like to work out? I like to work out. Let's do a virtual, workout where we push each other, whether it's physical or mental, it's outside of work. And, it's a connection where we, let's face it, I used to go to the gym on a fair amount. I don't go to the gym because there isn't a gym anymore. So
Yeah.
how much do I work out now?
Hey, Jay.
Maybe a day a week if I'm lucky. But if, if I've got some colleagues that are like, hey, I did, 3.5 miles this morning, or I did 30 minutes on the elliptical, or I, pumped iron for a half an hour. We're trying to promote that collectively. It's still in the infancy stages, so I don't know how successful it's going to be. But Stephen, that's on the line, it's one of those things that, in this new world, we have to just create new little sub communities of our community to promote things like, where we used to just go to the bar and have a beer and blow off some steam. Now we have to figure out how to do that virtually.
Hey, Jay,
Whether-
if I can add on to that too. So from the technical side of the Razor, meaning so my role within Razor is to work directly across the PMO, the account management, the NOC team, and the engineering team, as well as communicating with the executive leadership. So I have a multi-hat role. And one of the things that we do on the tech team is that we do a weekly, it's called Razor After the Dark, where it's from 4:30 to 6. And anybody is willing to join from the engineering and or the NOC team, where we're not technically working, but we're working. So if you wanted to have a beer, you can certainly do so as long as you're off your shift from that time. And we'll just round table it and have breakout meetings for individuals who want to talk about certain subjects, while we're just trying to clean up emails or something like that. But also then what we're doing is, as Jay said, we have a potential opportunity to, we're looking into a virtual fitness company, and we're trying to see what that entails, and using some fitness trackers. So like Peloton, they have a really great app that you can do teams challenges and challenge other organizations, and then other like mental wellness, such as scheduling yoga and or oh my goodness, I'm drawing the name of it. Just a mental conscious where you're meditating. So potentially like using a meditation tracker or an app. And those are some of the things that we're doing from a physical and mental wellness, but also team engagement.
Yeah, it's a good point. Team building is really what you're after, because I think that's another thing that we have a new employee. I have a new employee that's in Houston, and he hasn't even been to the office yet. Like, it's all work focused. How do you build that team and establish that relationship without engaging in something outside of work?
Yeah, so I would say, because for a lot of us that are on the phone now, we've known each other for years, Brian, Michael, Chris, etc. Share with us what you guys are doing. We're going down our path. We're listening to our customers. We're adopting what we're doing and doing it differently to keep that, let's face it, with, Razor, we hired 19 people this year. I've met face to face about 8 of them. And I know even
Crazy.
Brian, any different?
No, not at all. It's about the same. I was out the other night and met a
Yeah.
handful of them. I'm like, I didn't even know that they were hired. And I know Jeff, you started at a company.
Yeah, I was gonna say I left
Um,
Tyson Foods in August and switched to a new job at CubeSmart. So I've never met my team in
You've
person.
never, yeah. So you're one of those. You just got labeled, Jeff, as a COVID employee.
Yeah, pretty much. And we've hired so many people that they're just there and they're on calls. And people now that I've been there for a short tenure of 5 months, it's like, who are these people? Like, it's just
Yeah,
that, we're doing a lot of hiring, but it's definitely a different thing.
yeah,
I mean, within IT, I mean, we're doing to try and keep it up. We're doing like, the beer happy hours. We're doing game nights once a month, like those kind of things. Like people will get on and play
yeah,
Among Us or other games that are virtually played as a team, as a group, to try and, keep that camaraderie between individuals. But it's definitely interesting not being, I've been into the office once and I was there with two other people. And, for all the people that they've hired within the office, when we first started the conversation about going back into the office, well, I don't even have a spot in the office to go back to. So yeah, it's definitely different.
yeah. Yeah, and that's so. I think parting notes here. I don't think any of what we talked about is surprising to anyone. Maybe it's a little food for you. A couple of stats that you can help promote all the things that we're talking about, which is how do we continue to have a remote workforce, keep it productive, keep it happy, keep it, keep the camaraderie that we're all missing. So, Jeff, Brian, Michael, as you guys come up with, creative stuff, send it to Brian and I. Just, we're in the same boat as you, looking for, whether it's, virtual quizzo night, or it's the virtual happy hour with a theme. There is the reality that one of the big things that all of us are missing is that non-work work connection, if that makes sense.
Yes, to me it does.
Yeah,
I
no,
read
I
your
mean
mind.
that makes perfect sense. I probably have a little bit. I mean, Brian knows our situation over here. I mean, we've been running 25% in the office. Wow, for at least since last Octoberish, November, something like
September,
that.
October.
So and we're still holding to that. I mean, we had plans for obviously expanding the office, opening more, but we have an app you have to check in on and come in. But
Yep.
I think I'm one of 5 people, with the exception of our operations guys that are full tilt in the warehouse. But I'm one of 5 people in the office today, so I do get to see my help desk guy, you know, on a day that I might come in when I'm sitting next to him. It also doesn't hurt that he lives down the street from me too. So I have a little bit of we have a much smaller, group here. So we're a lot, we don't have those big challenges yet, but it definitely, I know when we're supporting our users internally, we make it a point to stay on the phone a little bit longer and ask them, about other things other than just work, because
Yeah.
and you'll see the people who are on the phone that are on those meetings that they're craving that extra 5-10 minutes
Yeah.
that you're talking about, nothing having to do with why you're on work fixing their computer.
Yeah, no,
So
you're spot on, and Brian and I have talked more over the last couple of days than we normally do, but the reality is, that was work related. But I can guarantee you, in the couple of hours that Brian and I talked over the last couple of days, there was more. How are your kids doing? How are how's the
Yeah.
wife?
Work was like
we're at
this
the
much.
grocery store right now. What? Oh, who do you use? Do you use Instacart? Do you, I completely agree. That little extra, pay attention to, the people, matters a lot. It literally can be the difference in healthy, happy employees versus not.
Hey, gentlemen, I unfortunately have to drop, and gentlemen and
Yeah.
ladies, I'm
No problem. We're
Yeah.
2 minutes up, so I'm gonna
Thank you,
pass it
guys.
out to our participants now. Anybody? Last question, last thought. Anything you want us to look into for you or follow up on? Let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, will do. Thanks, guys.
Talk
All
to you
right,
guys.
guys.
Appreciate
I
your time,
appreciate
guys.
the time. I
We'll
think
talk
this,
soon.
this was fun and a lot more interactive, which I think we actually anticipated. So thank you for your time, guys. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
All good. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody. Alrighty.
Looks like it's just down to you and I, Toby. So